My Lords, I think we all know that language and politics are very frequently bound up, even in some of the strangest places. I discovered myself only recently that even in a small and relatively homogeneous country like Norway, when it became independent from Sweden in the early 20th century, fell immediately into a long and furious row about what the written version of Norwegian should be. For historical reasons, the language of administration in Norway had been Danish up to that point, and two candidates presented themselves, both somewhat artificial, a Norwegianized version of Danish, or a sort of mélange of Norwegian dialects from different parts of the country. And as far as I know, it remains unresolved, and there are still two versions of written Norwegian that exist, and even there's no consensus. Now, it is obviously a privilege to speak after the noble Lord Browne of Belmont, but it is truly intimidating to speak after the noble Lord Bute, with the knowledge he showed of language, and the Irish language in particular, and its use north and south of the border. I was going to start by making a few comments which will really sound quite domestic and jejune compared to what we heard from Lord Bute. In regard to my own experience of that, my mother's family has been in the on the west coast of County Clare for the best part, at least, of 200 years. And while I'm sure in the early 19th century, into the mid-19th century, they would have spoken or been able to speak Irish, certainly by the late 19th century, that had largely gone. My grandmother, whom I remember well, and who was born in the 1880s, had no Irish at all. Of course, later it became a mandatory school subject, which ensured that absolutely nobody spoke it, because it was both hated as an imposition, badly taught, and hated as an imposition. And so you can wander around County Clare and really you won't find any Irish at all, whereas if you cross the Shannon estuary and you go over down into County Kerry, there's part of the Gaeltacht there, an area of preserved Irish language which has taken the concept so far that they have actually started a few years ago to prohibit road signs and directions from appearing in English. My lords, noble lords, will understand that in the greater part of the Republic of Ireland, road signs will be in both languages, in both English and Irish. But there's no English down there in the Dingle Peninsula. Now, of course, the Dingle Peninsula is one of the most famous and important Irish tourist attractions. It is now absolutely impossible to read the words Dingle Peninsula on a road sign, and the Irish, I have to tell you, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it, but bears no comparison or relationship to the words Dingle or Peninsula, either in the way in which it is written or indeed spoken. So one ends up with a degree of absurdities, but nonetheless, these are common in areas where languages are sensitive, but nonetheless, and this was the crucial point that the noble Lord Bute made, the sting has been taken out of all of it. Shopkeepers get annoyed, and the tourist industry gets annoyed about the absence of road signs in Kerry. In County Clare, I have to tell you, around where we are in Liscannor Bay, the biggest annoyance is that some bureaucratic zealot up in Dublin keeps sending down road signs, changing the customary spelling of the village of Lahinch, L-A-H-I-N-C-H, to L-E-H-I-N-C-H, which is the Dublin-approved way of spelling it. Now, we will not have any of that, and these road signs are regularly amended by spontaneous nighttime activity, so that the A is put back and the E is not there. And I have to tell you, even then, my lords, Lahinch is not actually the proper Irish name of the town, which is something quite different again. So this is all managed. There's an element of civilized behaviour in all of this. In Northern Ireland, sadly, the question of language is still more political and more weaponised, and there are genuine concerns about you might lose your way in County Kerry, but you won't lose your job because of the language that you speak, nor will you lose your identity. These issues are real. I don't claim a great qualification in entering into them, because what I want to move on to talk about rather more seriously and less anecdotally is the question of the Good Friday Agreement itself. I have always regarded, since it was entered into, the Good Friday Agreement not only as an international agreement, not only as a compact between communities, but also, if you like, a foundational constitutional document for the government of Northern Ireland, the devolved government of Northern Ireland, on the basis of consent in a constrained and managed, but nonetheless democratic framework based on community consent. And my concern, my anxiety, my Lord, and of course, as other noble lords have said, the crucial thing is that with the whole question of identity, the whole question of language rights and the legal basis of those rights and that identity are rooted in the Good Friday Agreement. No Good Friday Agreement, no language rights, no rights to identity. So it behoves everybody participating in this debate on the front benches and the back to put the protection of the Good Friday Agreement right at the top of their agenda, because everything flows from that. But my question, my lords, is, are we doing that? And I do not think we are. We are not protecting the Good Friday Agreement. We are undermining it in a number of ways. And the first is this bill and other legislation we have passed, including the imposition of abortion on Northern Ireland, a devolved matter, without the consent or agreement of the Executive and the Assembly. It cannot be the case that you are strengthening the Good Friday Agreement. It can only be the case that you are weakening it if every time a difficult matter comes up, which the local communities or their political leaders don't wish to face in the context of the structures they have agreed to, if what happens is that it's taken away, I'm not disputing the lawfulness of taking it away, but if it's taken away by this sovereign power, by the government, and passed through this sovereign parliament, we really have to take the Good Friday Agreement seriously as the basis of legislation. If we were doing this in relation to Scottish devolution, Welsh devolution, the anxieties, the upsetness, especially perhaps on opposite benches, but all round the House, will be very, very serious. We are in danger of turning this into something routine, and in doing so, we undermine the Good Friday Agreement. The second way in which it is being undermined, of course, and this was referred to by the noble Lord Browne of Belmont, is through the existence and the operation of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, one can have an argument about whether checks in the Irish Sea are doing damage, and what sort of damage and what quantum of damage, both to the economy in material terms and to the identity of the unionist community in, so to speak, psychological and spirit. One can have that argument, but there is one way in which it is definitely doing damage to the Good Friday Agreement, and that is that it has legally, effectively displaced the Good Friday Agreement as the foundational constitutional document, because it takes priority over it. Because every time there is a conflict between the Good Friday Agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol, the Northern Ireland Protocol comes first. We know that, first of all, because we actually legislated to amend the consent mechanism in the Good Friday Agreement to allow the Northern Ireland Protocol to be agreed in the first place. We did that here in this, I wasn't a member of your Lordship's House at the time, but that happened here in this Parliament. But it's also undermined, so it has this legal effect that the Good Friday Agreement remains, if you like, the foundational constitutional document, except when it has to give way to the Northern Ireland Protocol. In other words, the Northern Ireland Protocol takes priority, and it is replacing it as the fundamental document on which the country is governed. But the second way in which the Northern Ireland Protocol affects this is that all of this is happening without any consent, not even consent under one mechanism or another. There is no consent. There has been no consent mechanism tested in Northern Ireland for the imposition of this agreement upon them. Now, there will be a mechanism, there will be a means of testing it in the course of next year and subsequently, but nonetheless the offence of introducing it and forcing people to live under it without any consent is not something that can be very easily remedied, and does explain why the Good Friday Agreement is not being supported in the way we would want at the moment by so many communities. And it goes further because, of course, it is not merely the Northern Ireland Protocol that has been imposed without consent, but periodically amendments to existing European Union laws which are issued by Brussels have direct effect in Northern Ireland, although the people of Northern Ireland have no say in the democratic institutions which in other ways operate as a check and a mechanism for controlling those legal changes. This is a form of living under law that nobody in the Irish Republic would accept for themselves, and indeed would be wholly incompatible with their constitution. But we expect the people of Northern Ireland to live in this fashion, and it really is quite infamous. So while this bill sets up commissioners for the Irish language and commissioners for the Ulster Scots language, I am increasingly of the view that what we actually need is a commissioner for the protection of the Good Friday Agreement, because I look around and I wonder who is actually speaking for the Good Friday Agreement and for its primacy. Because if we do not keep that at the forefront of our minds, as I've said, my lords, we will lose that agreement, and with it we will lose all of these rights and all of this whole business of identity and language, which is so important to so many people, will be thrown back into a flux.